There was a time when American cars didn't need to be exaggerated to be beautiful. They didn't shout. They didn't try to intimidate. They were simply elegant. The 1950s were an unrepeatable moment, a decade when design mattered as much as engineering, when every line had intention, every chrome detail had purpose, and every car seemed to say something about the person behind the wheel. It wasn't just transportation, it was presence, it was style, it was identity. Today, when we look back, we think of tail fins, chrome, and impossible colors. But the true beauty of that era went far beyond the obvious. It lived in the proportions, in the restraint, in that effortless sense of luxury that didn't need justification. And here comes the key question. What if I told you that some of the most beautiful cars ever built weren't the most famous, the most remembered, or the ones that always appear on the usual lists? In this video, we're going to explore some of the most beautiful American automobiles of the 1950s. Not the fastest, not the most extreme, but the ones that best represented an era when elegance was the ultimate form of luxury. 1954. Oldsmobile 98 Holiday. If there was a car in the 1950s that seemed to understand the future ahead of its time, it was this one. This wasn't an automobile that went unnoticed, but it also didn't need exaggeration to command respect. Its design communicated something very specific and sporting luxury, long before that concept even had a name. It was long, low for its size, elegant without appearing delicate, and carried a presence that suggested it belonged to a higher class. Proportions are everything here. The endless hood, the clean side profile, and the pillarless Holiday hardtop created a flowing, almost uninterrupted silhouette. With the windows down, the car looked like a single continuous piece of design, free of visual breaks. It was refined, yet dynamic, a balance very few cars of the era managed to achieve. Inside, the message became even clearer. This wasn't a car designed merely to impress from the outside. High-quality materials, wide seating, elegant instrumentation, and an atmosphere that made the journey part of the pleasure, not just the destination. It was built for long distances traveled calmly, in style, and in absolute comfort. Under the hood sat the legendary 324 cubic inch Rocket 5.8, one of the most respected engines of its time. In its stronger configurations, it produced over 230 horsepower, serious output for the mid-1950s. This wasn't loud, aggressive power. It was deep, smooth, constant strength. The kind of engine that allowed the car to accelerate effortlessly, as if it always had hidden reserves waiting. And that is the secret behind its beauty. It wasn't a car trying to grab attention. It was a car that carried presence naturally. Today, the Oldsmobile 98 Holiday is one of those classics many people overlook, yet it has aged with remarkable dignity. A well-preserved example typically ranges between $45,000 and $80,000, depending on condition and originality. Figures that reflect not only its size and luxury, but also its historical importance. It wasn't a muscle car. It wasn't a sports car. But it was one of the most elegant expressions of American luxury in the 1950s. And the best part is, this is only the beginning of the journey. 1952 to 1953. Buick Roadmaster convertible. If the Oldsmobile represented emerging sporting luxury, the Roadmaster was something else entirely. It was flowing luxury, almost architectural, a car that didn't feel drawn from lines, but sculpted from volume. The early 1950s Roadmaster had a presence that was impossible to ignore, long, wide, and surprisingly low for its size, with a body that seemed to glide over the pavement. Everything about it conveyed solidity, but also elegance. There was no visual tension, no aggression, just a feeling of absolute confidence. The secret to its beauty was the way the shapes flowed together. The imposing front end, still restrained tail fins, chrome applied with intention, and that continuous sideline that made the car appear even longer than it already was. As a convertible, the Roadmaster reached another level entirely. With the top down, it became a pure statement of status and taste. Inside, the experience felt like a rolling living room, broad seats, premium materials, and a level of isolation that seemed to erase the outside world. This wasn't a car meant to be driven in a hurry. It was a car meant to savor, to let the road pass slowly, while everything around you felt calm and controlled. Under the hood lived one of Buick's most iconic engines, the the 322 cubic inch nail head, capable of producing around 236 horsepower. It wasn't built to impress on paper. It was built to deliver strong torque from very low RPM, and that is its greatest aesthetic virtue. The Roadmaster didn't need to look sporty to be desirable. It didn't need exaggeration to be elegant. Its beauty lived in its calmness, in its perfectly distributed visual weight, and in the sense that everything was exactly where it was meant to be. Today, a well-preserved Buick Roadmaster convertible typically ranges from $60,000 to $100,000, depending on condition and restoration. A reflection of what it has always been. A car for those who understood that true luxury never needs explanation. 1954, Cadillac Series 62, Coupe de Ville. Before Cadillac fully surrendered to oversized tail fins and visual drama, there was this almost perfect moment. The early 1950s Series 62 is, for many, the definition of classic American elegance. Its design is clean, balanced, and deeply cinematic. The long hood, the straight shoulder line, the low, well-integrated roof, everything feels carefully measured to communicate status without exaggeration. It wasn't trying to impress through extravagance, but through proportion. And that is exactly what makes it so beautiful even today. This Cadillac looked like a movie star's car, yet without unnecessary theatrics. Chrome was present, yes, but thoughtfully applied. The fins were still restrained, almost shy, and the entire composition projected elegant solidity rather than visual spectacle. Inside, the message was unmistakable. This was serious luxury. Premium materials, wide seating, clear instrumentation, and an atmosphere designed for silent travel and absolute comfort. It wasn't a sports car, and it never pretended to be. It was the kind of car that made you feel like you had already arrived, before even stepping out. Under the hood, Cadillac fitted its refined 331 cubic inch V8, producing roughly 210 to 230 horsepower, depending on the year. It gained speed effortlessly, without vibration or urgency. It was velocity wrapped in silk, something very few manufacturers knew how to deliver so well. Today, a well-preserved Cadillac Series 62 Coupe de Ville typically ranges between $50,000 and $90,000, depending on condition and originality, a value that perfectly reflects what it represents, one of the most refined moments in Cadillac design history. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Do you prefer this kind of restrained, classic elegance, or the more exaggerated style Cadillac would embrace just a few years later? Leave it in the comments, because that answer says a lot about how each of us understands beauty in the 1950s. 1953 Packard Caribbean. This car was never meant to please everyone, and that was exactly its problem, and its greatest virtue. While Cadillac and Buick aimed for broad desirability, Packard did something different with the Caribbean. It built a car designed to impress only a select few. It was exclusive by concept, not by marketing, and you could feel that in every detail. The Caribbean sat low, wide, and visually commanding, but its boldest statement came through color. Packard embraced two-tone and even three-tone combinations, at a time when many manufacturers still hesitated to step outside the mold. It wasn't discreet, it was elegant, but with a visual confidence that was rare in the 1950s. There is nothing timid about its silhouette, nothing overly conservative. The design is direct, almost defiant. The front end carries real visual weight. The body appears firmly planted on the pavement, and the overall impression communicates something very specific. Status without needing exaggeration. It wasn't built to attract everyone's attention. It was built to be noticed by people who already drove expensive cars. Inside, the Caribbean felt different. This wasn't soft luxury, it was serious luxury. High-quality materials, meticulous finishes, and a sense of exclusivity that never tried to be loud. It felt tailored rather than mass-produced. And here is the most interesting part of the Caribbean. It was never a mass success. It was never a popular icon. But it became one of the final grand gestures from a brand that refused to become ordinary. Today, a well-preserved Packard Caribbean typically falls between $80,000 and $140,000. Numbers that reflect not only its design, but also its rarity and historical significance. It didn't age like a trend. It aged like a collector's piece. 1952 to 1955 Lincoln Capri. This is one of those cars that almost never appears on most beautiful lists. And that says more about the audience than about the automobile itself. The Capri never tried to be spectacular. It didn't wear outrageous colors, exaggerated lines, or chrome that demanded attention. And precisely because of that, it feels incredibly elegant today. It was a car designed for someone who didn't need to prove anything. Visually, it was clean, proportional, and confidently grounded. The front end is serious, almost institutional, yet never rigid. The body flows continuously without unnecessary ornamentation, carrying a low, assured stance that communicates calm authority. It doesn't look fashionable. It looks thoughtfully engineered. Lincoln occupied a very particular space with this car. It wasn't as ostentatious as a Cadillac, nor as sporty as some rivals. It felt more European in spirit, more restrained, more sober. That subtlety made it invisible to many, but irresistible to others. Inside, the Capri reinforced the idea of rational luxury. Spacious, comfortable, well-finished, and free from theatrics. Everything was exactly where it should be. It was built for long-distance travel, without fatigue, without noise, and without the feeling of being surrounded by excess. Under the hood, the Capri featured large Lincoln V8 engines. First the 317 cubic inches, later the 341, producing around 225 horsepower. These were smooth engines, designed to deliver authority without drama. And that is its charm. The Capri didn't seek applause. It was built to endure. Today, a well-preserved Lincoln Capri typically ranges between $35,000 and $65,000. Relatively modest figures for a car with this level of design, presence, and history. It remains an underrated gem, and perhaps that is exactly what makes it so appealing. 1950 to 1952, Chrysler Windsor Deluxe. This car plays a very dangerous game in a video like this, looking too proper. The Windsor doesn't try to seduce you at first glance. It lacks the obvious glamour of a Cadillac and the bold personality of a Packard Caribbean. Its design is conservative, almost formal, and precisely because of that, many people overlook it. But when you take a slower look, it begins to reveal something deeper. The lines are clean, balanced, and surprisingly European for an early 1950s American car. There is no exaggeration, no theatrical gesture. Everything feels measured. It's the kind of automobile that doesn't shout, "Look at me." Yet the longer you observe it, the better it ages in your mind. The Windsor represents a type of elegance that barely exists anymore. Quiet, polite, engineered to last for decades rather than just a season. It's easy to picture it parked in front of a classic hotel, or gliding down a secondary highway with total composure, never trying to prove anything. Inside, the philosophy was clear: real comfort, generous space, wide seating, thoughtfully finished materials, and a sense of solidity that made everything feel under control. This was a car built to be used every day, for many years. And here is what makes the Windsor Deluxe so interesting. It was never an aspirational car. It was never a pop icon, but it was a perfect example of conservative good taste. Today, a well-preserved Chrysler Windsor Deluxe typically ranges between $30,000 and $55,000. Relatively accessible numbers for a vehicle with this level of presence and historical quality. It's one of those classics that appreciates not because of fame, but because of coherence. And now, a direct question for you. Are you drawn to this kind of sober, understated elegance? Or do you prefer the louder, more theatrical designs of the 1950s? Leave it in the comments. 1951, Nash Ambassador Custom. This car belongs to a very special category, the future that arrived too early. While most American manufacturers were still committed to heavy lines and traditional proportions, Nash chose a different path. The Ambassador didn't look aggressive, sporty, or luxurious in the classic sense. It looked different. And in the 1950s, that wasn't always an advantage. Its design is rounded, aerodynamic, and strikingly modern even today. The lines flow without harsh interruptions, the front end is clean, and the overall shape conveys an unusual sense of visual efficiency for the era. There is no drama, no unnecessary ornamentation. By American standards of the time, it was almost minimalist. What makes this even more compelling is that the aesthetic wasn't just about style. Nash was obsessed with aerodynamics and efficiency long before those ideas became fashionable. The Ambassador Custom was designed to slice through the air, to ride smoothly and steadily, to travel quickly without visual or mechanical strain. Inside, the same logic prevailed. Generous space, an airy atmosphere, and a layout focused on real comfort rather than ostentatious luxury. This was a car designed to be used, not simply admired from a distance. Today, a well-preserved Nash Ambassador Custom typically sits between $25,000 and $45,000, making it one of the most underrated examples of 1950s American design. It isn't famous, it isn't obvious, but it is unquestionably one of the most interesting cars in this group. 1954 to 1956, Pontiac Star Chief Convertible. This car exists to challenge a very common assumption, that Pontiac was always a rough, performance-first brand. Before it became synonymous with muscle and aggression, Pontiac experienced a moment of genuine elegance, and the Star Chief may be the best expression of it. It wasn't striking because of excess, but because of balance. The design is long, fluid, and beautifully proportioned. The body seems to stretch naturally, without abrupt breaks or forced elements. The fins remain restrained, the chrome supports rather than dominates, and the entire composition communicates a sense of visual lightness that was unusual for a car of this size. With the top down, the Star Chief transformed completely. It no longer looked like a large family car. It resembled an American grand tourer, built for open highways, traveled with calm confidence and style, elegant without pretension, attractive without begging for attention. Within General Motors, this Pontiac represented something very specific, an aspirational yet attainable alternative. It didn't carry the emotional distance of a Cadillac, nor the extreme restraint of some competitors. It was a car that wanted to be liked, and achieved it effortlessly. Inside, the atmosphere reinforced that promise. Generous space, wide seating, and a clear emphasis on comfort, meant to enhance the journey, not just the destination. There was no unnecessary extravagance, only a welcoming environment that felt thoughtfully resolved. Under the hood, the Star Chief featured Pontiac's early V8 engines, the 287 and later the 316 cubic inches, producing over 220 horsepower in their best-equipped forms. It wasn't a sports car, but it was more than capable for its size. Acceleration was smooth, and it held highway speeds with an ease that surprised anyone judging it solely by its elegant appearance. And that is exactly what makes it special today. It wasn't extreme, it wasn't controversial, it was simply beautiful, in a time when that alone was enough. In today's collector market, a well-preserved Pontiac Star Chief convertible typically ranges between $40,000 and $70,000, reflecting a growing appreciation for a side of Pontiac many people forgot ever existed. 1956. Ford Fairlane. This car wasn't trying to be the most luxurious or the most exclusive. Its goal was something far more interesting, to represent the optimism of the 1950s. The Fairlane is color, visual lightness, and confidence. It doesn't carry the solemnity of a Lincoln or the authority of a Cadillac. Instead, it offers something different, a sense of freshness. It feels like a car built for sunshine, for wide boulevards, for a moment in history when everything seemed to be moving forward. Visually, it is one of the best proportioned Fords of the decade. The lines are clean, color plays a fundamental role, and the chrome feels cheerful rather than heavy. It doesn't try to dominate the road, it invites you in. Today, its presence feels incredibly charming, but no less beautiful because of it. The Fairlane perfectly captured the midpoint between elegance and accessibility. It was aspirational, yet attainable. Not reserved for a closed elite, it became a real part of the American landscape, seen, experienced, and remembered. Inside, the philosophy was simple and effective. Plenty of space, excellent visibility, and an interior designed for everyday use without losing its charm. It wasn't meant to dazzle with extreme luxury, but to complement the car's overall experience, light, optimistic, and enjoyable. Under the hood, Ford offered a wide range of engines, but the Fairlane truly came alive when equipped with the 292 cubic inch Y-block V8, producing around 200 horsepower. More than enough to give the car smooth, confident performance for its time. Today, a well-preserved 1956 Ford Fairlane typically ranges between $30,000 and $55,000, depending on condition and specification. It isn't the most expensive classic, nor the most sought after, but few capture the spirit of their era quite as clearly. 1956 Studebaker Golden Hawk. This is a car that doesn't fit comfortably into any category, and that's exactly why it works so well. The Golden Hawk is aggressive, compact, and visually tense in a decade dominated by long, flowing automobiles. It doesn't look relaxed, it doesn't look ceremonial, it looks determined. And that makes it an aesthetic rarity among 1950s cars. Its design carries a clear European influence. Shorter overall, with a higher beltline and a front end that projects immediate character, it doesn't chase classic elegance. It demands presence. The bulging hood, bold grille, and unconventional proportions make it feel almost like an outsider surrounded by refined luxury cruisers. What makes it even more compelling is that the visual attitude wasn't just for show. Studebaker decided the Golden Hawk shouldn't merely look fast. It had to be fast. It was powered by the Packard-built 352 cubic inch V8, delivering roughly 275 horsepower, an impressive figure for such a compact and relatively lightweight car. That power-to-weight ratio made it one of the quickest American cars of its time. It didn't just appear aggressive, it genuinely was. This gave the Golden Hawk a personality unlike anything else on this list. While many 1950s cars seemed designed to glide down the highway, the Golden Hawk looked ready to attack it. This wasn't a car for leisurely drives, it was a car for drivers. Inside, the atmosphere leaned more toward function than pure luxury. Well finished, certainly, but without the ambition of becoming a rolling living room. Everything reinforced the idea that this Studebaker was built for someone who valued the driving experience more than social status. And that is its greatest achievement. The Golden Hawk didn't try to compete with Cadillac in luxury. It didn't try to match Buick in refinement. It competed with itself and created something unique. Today, a well-preserved Studebaker Golden Hawk typically falls between $45,000 and $80,000. These cars didn't need extreme numbers or aggressive styling to justify their beauty. They were beautiful because they were thoughtfully designed, because they communicated calm, status, and a very clear idea of what luxury meant at that moment in history. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these cars do you consider the most beautiful of the 1950s? Leave it in the comments because every choice reveals something different about how we understand classic beauty. And if you enjoyed this journey, I recommend watching the video now appearing on your screen, where we explore the most beautiful American wagons of the 1950s. Family cars that, surprisingly, shared the same elegance, presence, and spirit as these great sedans and coupes. See you on the next journey through the golden age of the American automobile.